The eagle eyed amongst you will notice I'm skating a single kick today, Moonshine's Kill Your Idols deck. Now I don't usually skate a flat nose board, but for the Sidewinder, there are huge benefits to using a proper single kick with a truly flat nose. You can do them on anything. I learned these on street boards back in the early 2000s, but this is really going to help. There are three main reasons a setup like this is really going to help you. First of all is the length. The longer the board is, the more you're going to have to stretch to get up onto this end of the board. Now the second thing is that most single kicks have very square tails. That gives you an incredible amount of stability in truck compared to standing on the rounded end, which will roll around like crazy. And the third and hopefully most obvious point is that a flat nose is far easier to stand on the underside of than a steep kicktail. So while you can learn this on anything, if you have a single kick, definitely give it a go on that first, because you're going to make your life so much easier. You might think you need to be able to pogo to do this trick, but honestly, this probably isn't going to help you. The reason for that is that the whole trick can be one fluid motion if all you do is a 50-50. You're going to go up, bend down, and then keep that entrance motion going. So don't worry about bouncing. Focus on just getting into a 50-50 and balancing. As long as you can do that for about that long, you're set. If you don't believe me, ask yourself what looks better. Whatever this arsehole's doing, or this. The problem, of course, is as you bend down to grab the wheels, you're leaning forward. If you don't do something to counteract that, you are literally just gonna fall onto your face. So as you bend down, stick this leg out behind you to give you that split second more balance that you need to complete the trick. Regardless of whether you decide to bounce or not, once you're in position on the truck, you've got to grab something down here to start the trick. Now, for beginners, there's a tendency to grab the truck and use that because it seems like a solid anchor. That's how I learned them, and I learned the hard way why you shouldn't do that. No matter what your trucks are, there's a good chance your fingers are going to get caught, snagged, or even worse, ripped up on the mounting hardware. So rather than grab the truck, grab one of the wheels. Doesn't really matter which, either should be accessible. I tend to go with the one under my heel because that gives me a really good anchor point for my chosen flip out. If you want to go for the toe side wheel, stick with that one. Doesn't matter, either's good. So you're in position, you're balanced, you grabbed a wheel, you're ready to go. The next step is to get to the underside, or technically right now, the top side of the nose. And there are two approaches for that. The first one, the classic, the traditional, while you're gripping this, you're going to step up onto that. Now, I don't like doing that. I think it's uncomfortable, I think it's cramped, and while there are some variations where that is essential, for this one, I think we can cheat a little. See, once you're here, you can actually hop, lift the tail slightly. That's important, we'll get to it in a second. And as I do that, I let the nose drop. Now the goal is as I hop, I'm going to swing my front foot in and land on the underside of the nose, hopefully before it hits the floor, thus keeping the whole thing under control. And it should look something like this. Now the problem with this kind of jump and stab approach is that because you lose contact with it for a second, you're also introducing an element of inconsistency. Now, anytime you are stabbing and landing there, you've got to be pretty precise. Same rules apply for this as they do for Caspers. This is just sloppy, wrong. This, also not good. This, you might as well just give up on life. Stay as tight as you can. We can let you get away with a little bit of sloppiness because the deck is obviously a lot skinnier than your foot is. But if you're here, just give up and try again. Keep it tight. I glossed over it earlier, but the second biggest problem with Sidewinders is when people do this. If the deck lands fully upside down at any point, both ends of the board touching the floor, that's not a Sidewinder, that's a failure. The goal is always going to be to get from here to there. It doesn't matter whether you're doing this basic Sidewinder down to the nose, or that Sidewinder where you get back onto the truck. It should be a clean transfer from there to there. So, like I said, grip, hop, and pull up on this wheel. That's why we've got a good anchor. to make sure you get a clean transfer from one end to the other. Because again, to reiterate, if you do this, it just looks bad. Don't do it. Once you found yourself in this position, and by this position I do obviously mean that, put that leg out behind you for balance, don't stand on the floor. You'd be amazed at how many people can misinterpret things. Right, anyway, I am demonstrating, hence the foot plant. So at this point, what do you do? This is quite an unusual position. Like, how do you get out of this? And to be honest, there are as many different ways of getting out of this as there are freestylers. You can just improvise. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on where you've chosen to grab it, whether you've chosen to ignore me and grab the truck, or you've grabbed that wheel or that wheel. There's all sorts of options here. The most obvious and basic is perhaps just to put your back foot under, go to a nose casper. You could just lift up, do a little half flip, and that way. If you've grabbed this wheel, you might want to pull inwards and half flip that way. Though I suspect that might break your fingers, so be careful with that. If you've grabbed the truck, you might just go end over end. Now, for me personally, what I always like to do, grabbing this wheel, pull in, pull your elbow into your chest and roll it through. Now, if you get that right, with a bit of a flick of the hand, you can go from this point through to grip. You can roll it through, get to rail, or my personal favorite, because it's so fun, just give it a little nudge from here, land to a regular casper. It's surprisingly easy to do, and it looks quite flashy, so that's quite a satisfying one. Now that's another reason I like doing these on single kicks. That nice rounded end combined with something flat to stand on, it makes that particular trick feel like a bit of a dream. But ultimately, how you exit this trick is up to you. Play around, improvise. Do something that suits your body type, your board, your style of skating. As long as it doesn't involve putting a foot on the floor, you know who you are. Ugh. So there we go, the Sidewinder. Yeah, it's a truck trick so simple that even I, the most ardent of truck trick haters, can do it. And, you know, as a glimpse behind the curtain, I'll do it maybe once every 2 months, every 3 months. I never have to work on keeping it consistent, because once you've got it, it just works. There's not much else to say on it. I appreciate the fact that learning to use your board like a climbing frame is a bit odd, so it might take you a little bit of getting used to, but yeah, once you've learned it, basically do it for the rest of time. And for that reason alone, it's a useful one to have in the bag. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Go away and do some rolling. Stationary tricks are boring, Jesus.